Thanks for coming out to Cake and coming to one of our first panels, Real Life, a roundtable about women and memoir and autobiography and comics. We've got a super talented panel today. I'm a little nervous and super excited to introduce everyone. Keiler Roberts does an amazing series called Powdered Milk. Marian Runk is the author of Magic Hedge, Masked Owls, and a bunch of minis with assorted titles, and they're all amazing. Leslie Stein's Eye of the Majestic Creature is one of my favorite comics ever. Rina Ayuyang has a collection of her mini comic Namby Pamby, Whirlwind Wonderland, which I always tongue twist when I say it. That's right? Yeah. Great. Julia Wertz has, I think her latest book is Drinking at the Movies, which is a fantastic memoir of moving to New York. And Lucy Knisley, who used to live in Chicago, is a fabulous autobiographical cartoonist as well. Her books French Milk and Radiator Days and Make Yourself Happy. Are those all available upstairs?
Yep, they're all there.
Great. Without further ado, we had been emailing before, and I suggested the first question from what everyone was posing might be, why make comics about your own life, and why share them with strangers? And I'm going to turn it over to all of you.
Should we go down the row, or do you just want us to yell out our answers?
Whoever has it fast is like Jeopardy here, you know. Boom.
No, I'm gonna have anxiety.
What is I don't know.
No.
Can you guys hear? Can you? Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah, you just gotta get
Gotta get right
all up
into
on
it.
there. You
I don't
start.
know. Okay.
Yeah.
Why do I feel the need to share comics about myself? Is that the question?
Yeah, why?
I don't know. I think it's I guess why do I do autobio? It's just to share a story that I think is hilarious or something that can connect with other people. It's sort of like having a conversation, like on the telephone, like what happened that day, or like emailing, like having this crazy conversation with another person. It's it's conversational. I don't know. Why does everyone else do it?
My reason for doing it is mine on?
I don't know.
I don't know why we can't figure this out. Is more of I think it's more of like a selfish, almost narcissistic reason is that, and I think this is very common with autobio things, like we hate ourselves a little bit to a certain degree, but there's this, we're like obsessed with ourselves. So we also like to put it in a comic. Almost it's like a therapy kind of thing for me. Like I have a lot of problems figuring out why I do certain things or identifying behavioral patterns, but when I put it in a comic, I can read back and be like, why didn't I can figure it out? And I'm like, it's so obvious what my problem is. So for me, it's more of like a cathartic sort of manifestation of my self-obsession that I force on other people. And then I put fart jokes in there, and it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like your work is like, it's almost like you're purging yourself of like your experiences, and then you look back and you figure out why you wrote it.
Yeah.
You have this like magical, all of a sudden it's like, I need to do this, I don't know why. And it makes perfect sense to me, and then you look back and you're like, why did I do that? And then you figure it out. And it's, I don't know, it's really, I think after you've done it for a few years, because I've been doing it for like 10 years and I'm going to continue to do the same series, it's also like a time marker. Like I remember where I was in my life when I did this issue, and I remember what I was feeling and where I was living. And so it's kind of almost like a little diary for yourself. But I mean, hopefully, for me, I want to make people laugh, and I laugh at myself pretty much constantly. So it's like, okay, like that's funny to me. Put it out there.
Yeah, the time capsule aspect of it is really interesting. That you were talking about how you can look back and be like, oh, I felt exactly like that then, because you can look back at a photograph of something that you did or experienced and say, oh yeah, I remember that looked like that, but you can't really remember what you were feeling or going through at the time. So it's really interesting to have this record of your inner monologue at certain points in your life. But I think the reason why I really do it is to create this empathetic bond, because it's so hard to connect with people and to sort of understand the distance and difference between yourself and other people, that I find that when I make autobiographical comics and people are like, I experienced similar things, or I had that happen to me too, it makes me feel better, it makes them feel better to sort of like know that you're not the only person experiencing these things, or thinking about these sort of things, or obsessing over weird, crazy stuff that goes through your brain. So that's something I really get a lot out of in terms of making autobiocomics.
Yeah, do you remember in like a high school or something when you just felt that something was wrong with you, and you would find one book that showed that you weren't? So as an autobiographical cartoonist, when people, I don't know if you guys probably feel the same way, when people come up, like the biggest compliment you can give someone is like, reading your book just made me feel a little bit better.
Right.
And that's like the best benefit of, embarrassing yourself and putting it out there, is just kind of to like connect with someone else and make their life a little bit easier.
Exactly.
It's really indirect, though. It's like, I feel like I'm hearing feedback. It's like a vacuum or something. Okay. Am I causing it, or? No. Okay. When I read something, whether it's comics or not, autobiographical, like I just want to participate in some way. It's like you feel so good reading it, and you want to create that empathy, but it's not like that kind of empathy you get from a friend. It never goes two ways. I read something by, this person, and then I write something, and then someone else reads it. So it doesn't like really make you in a community in a sense. It's like you're in this imaginary community, but there's something really comforting about that because it's limitless,
Right, this liminal online space frequently. Yeah.
It's like a symbiotic relationship that you don't experience on
Right.
those levels.
I mean, you could journal also and like keep track of everything and learn your patterns, but there's something really different about making it public. And I think I thought about your question for a really long time because I was thinking, I don't actually want people to know my personal stories. I don't want to like the idea of sitting up here and saying the things that I would reveal in my comics, like, you should know these things about me, would be horrible. But there's something else that happens when you write it down, and like, I don't know if anyone, Julia, there was one panel in one of your comics where you had lunch with your mother, and you talked about like when you record something, you include these things, and she would include these things, and she included like what you ate, and you were talking about how ridiculous, like in that instance, like the lunch was. But then you wrote down, I write this and this, like.
Yeah, my mom keeps notes in the same way that I do of like what's important. So when she travels, but I'm always writing down, it's interesting, 'cause I'll write down the emotions of what we're doing, and then I'll look at my mom's notebook, and it's like, we ate at a Polish restaurant, and the pierogies were $6. And so I jumped on her for that. Yeah, but then I was like, that's an interesting way to, like, the differences of what people remember. Right. And Autobio combines all of those, so I think it works.
And I guess like in the way you figure out which stories to tell, there's like an emotion to behind it too. It's not just like recording what you did that day and like just like a grocery list of what's going. There has to be like a reason, a spark, a
story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I always kind of wonder, like, you're talking about. You don't really want to talk about, like, it's not really about talking about your life, things in your life. I kind of wonder if people are any, like, selective memory about, certain events, or, like, how does the editing, work with autobio and in your autobio or anyone's, but.
Yeah, if you're making an autobio comic, this is fine if you're starting out, but if you have, like, 4 panels and you're like, I woke up, then I ate breakfast, then I masturbated, then I fed the cat and went to bed. That's fine if you're starting out, but you need to look, it's not interesting to other people, so you need to like look beyond that, like what's any emotion, or like take something that's unique to you and put it in there. Otherwise, it's not a good comic.
I mean, it's good practice for drawing, I guess, and getting you drawing every day, and not having to come up with a new story every day because you're just like, I did this. But I feel like those are what people refer to as journal comics, and I think autobio is different. It's all like categorizing this stuff is ridiculous anyway, but there's definitely a difference between sort of keeping a journal comic, which is a lot more like you could keep that private, and you wouldn't miss out all that much. But
and it's like day by day, right?
Right, yeah. Okay. And that's sort of like a test of endurance more. Which is, some people try and like do a journal comic every day, which is a really good drawing exercise. I mean, that'll get you like, get you followers and sort of build up a following. And that's great, but I really think that it's different to sort of look at something that occurred to that happened in your life and try and tell a story about it and try and reach people with it.
Do you have anything to say?
I can say something, just going back to the first question. I think the reason I started doing like memoir when I started doing comics, it was like, there were a few things in my life that were happening. Like, I was like, sort of like, not publicly, but like coming out as like liking all genders to like my family and stuff. And I was reading a lot of memoir at that time, and it was really helpful to me. And so it was kind of like a natural transition, because it was the same time I was starting to realize that like words and images were how I wrote my stories. And like when I was younger, I wrote fiction, like, you know, like when I was like, 12 or whatever. But I was always like copying the formulas that other people used in this way that wasn't really very interesting. So I think I kind of came to it. And I was also like reading Persepolis and Mouse and all these other things at the same time. And I was like, wow, these stories are like really affecting me in a way that's different than some of these other comics I'm reading, and seem like the personal emotional connection is really important to me. And I think sometimes telling your own story, even though it can be sometimes scary and really hard, offers your reader that entry. And I also think it's a really good way to get people because I'm interested in people who don't just read comics, reading my comics. And I think memoir and autobiography is a really good way to get those people. I mean, if you can get your work out there, which is like a different,
And copying people, I think, is good too. When you first start out, like, don't feel bad if you just rip someone off. Maybe don't put it on the internet, but like,
sell it.
Yeah, don't show anyone. But it is a great way to get into the rhythm until you find your own rhythm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Who did you copy? Did you do that in the, originally?
Probably Julie Doucet. Ivan Brunetti.
I tried to rip off Adrian Tomine.
Oh yeah, I still use for drawing references. I use him, but that's a good one.
Asian guy glasses.
Yeah, all the time. That's all my comic is. Is there a new question? This one's spent.
I have a question. Sorry, this is kind of like a hippie question, but how do you deal with like kindness within using the people in your life as fodder for your work? I mean, because I use my family and my friends. Some of my friends are like, yeah, it's awesome, like, make me a cartoon. And then they see it and they're like, oh. And other ones like, yeah, that's just like me. And then I like hide my comics from my family. Like, I'm from Chicago, and they're like, why are you here? And I'm like, oh, I just got some shit to do, but I did not write about you guys in my comic book. I don't draw comic books. Yeah, I'm an artist.
Have they read your comics?
They found them online.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah, it was, so that's why I'm asking the question, because it's like, for me, it's a hot topic. So how do you guys deal with that?
I hide some of them and show them others.
Oh, that's
and I don't put everything online.
Yeah.
So, like, if I did a comic about my best friend from growing up, and I guess I do have it online, but I just assume I'm never going to see her. But I don't show that one to my family because they're still friends with like her family, and I'm not ready to have that like conversation yet or whatever,
but Isn't it nice, like, the reason I hide it is because I don't want to feel like, this is my art and my life and like my heart, and I don't make money at it, and I work at it every day, and I don't want to censor myself.
Yeah.
And for them, but at the same time, then I feel really guilty. It's like, I think that's just a basic family thing though, like when they come to visit and you're like, I leave, and then they leave, and you're like, why was I so bitchy,
The other thing I do is I actually, like, once I started realizing I can't hide everything from my family, is I do some nice things about them also, like, which is like emotionally good for me as well as them,
Like,
but I mean I don't lie, like I also
look
like
at
show
your
their
read
faults.
page. Sometimes look at this of you, this like
the
smiley
poetry is
face.
so pretty.
Yeah.
We'll just tape those over the like bad comics in the book and then give it to them.
Well, I made one for my grandparents once, a zine that like was just the clean comics, and told them that that's what it. But how does your mom react to being like a huge character in your comics?
Oh, she's totally cool with it. I'm lucky because I get along really well with my mom, and she's cool, so she is okay with being in the comic. But my grandmother is like this hilarious racist old lady, and she just did this series of like ridiculous things while I was visiting her once, and I was just keeping like little diary comic kind of things, and I collected a bunch of my little diary comic things into this book that it's just like collected student work and whatever kind of things. So I didn't send it to her or anything. It just didn't really occur to me. And some busybody neighbor of hers like bought it online and like gave it to her, and they were like, Gloria, you need to see this. And there's like references to drug use and sex and like all this stuff in there that I just wouldn't give her that particular book that I made. But she didn't care about any of that. There was one comic where I'm just talking about these weird things that she does. Like she has a family photograph of the Bush family taped to the inside of her dish cabinet. So when you open her dish cabinet, you're like, hello.
That's amazing.
It's creepy. Like she's hiding it from us, or I don't know. It's always there. It's been there for years.
Was she into Nixon?
I don't know. I can't talk about politics with her, so we don't really discuss it. But every time I get a dish, I'm like, hello. So there's just like weird things that I put in this comic that are kind of funny. And like, oh God, we were having dinner and like the waiter came and brought us food, and I was like, oh, he's cute. And she just turns to me and goes, if you marry a black, I'm gonna come back and haunt you. And I was like, oh my God. So it made it into the comic. Because it was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous thing to say, right? Like just, oh my God. So she was really offended and mad about this comic. And so at first I was like, I'm so sorry, Grandma, that you were like offended by this. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings and stuff. And then I thought about it for a minute and I was like, but maybe you shouldn't say horrible racist things in front of your autobiographical cartoonist granddaughter.
Or ever.
Or ever. Yeah, if you're going to say them, maybe keep them to yourself. Say them in the privacy of your own home. And definitely don't say them around somebody who like chronicles their life and the like funny things that happen to them. So
you're blaming
you
her?
put the blame on her.
right. Don't piss me off because you will make it into a comic. No, I mean, like, I try not to use comics as a weapon ever. So, like, friends of mine will say something to me and they'll be like, please don't put this in a comic. And I never do. But, like, sometimes I'll be like, are you sure you don't want me to make a comic about this? Because it's really funny. But that's the only time I've ever gotten in real trouble about it. Like, I'm out of the will. Forget it. Like, my grandmother is so mad about comics. She said a terrible thing, and she should have been called out on it. But, I'm not going to put her in comics probably again.
I think the worst thing about using your family and friends is, your friends will be like, don't put that in the comic. But the worst is when you can tell that they're trying to be in a comic. Yeah. And I'm like, what you're saying is really funny, but you're so desperate to be in it that I'm not going to do it. But I use my family a lot in my comic, and my mom also, she likes being in it. She's always like, she's like, where am I? I'm so funny. Like, she's really into being in it, and I don't paint her in the most flattering light, but she's like me. She's very self-depreciating. She can take it, and I'll call her like all kinds of names in my comic. But my dad doesn't have the same sense of humor, and he doesn't really like being in the comic. And once he called me to like yell at me for calling my mom a cunt in the comic, and I was like, Mom was in on that. She thinks it's really funny. And he could not comprehend how my mom could be into that. So everyone reacts really differently. My dad doesn't like my comics at all. He's made that very clear, but I think that family really, if you aren't too harsh on them, I don't know, like if you don't like it at first, you can grow into it, but I think everyone likes being drawn and like looking funny or like being put into something. It's flattering.
But your dad actually is like, I don't like your comic.
He sent me an email once and he told me that he didn't like 85% of my work and the other 15%.
Here's a pie chart of what I like.
He like broke it down and told me why, and then he said, but I could, some of them are, I guess they're kind of funny. It's okay, I don't really.
Weird.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's kind of weird because my comics are pretty upbeat and they're not really that controversial or anything, with dealing with family or whatever. But a lot of them have to deal with my dad, and a lot of people who read it like love the stories of my dad. So my dad is sort of like feels like this superstar. He hasn't read any of my comics, but he's like, oh yeah. So like when he finds out, like my mom will read it. And she'll be like, oh, my God, that's hysterical. And, like, it paints, like, this funny picture of, like, the funny things he says because, he's Filipino. But
he hasn't read it?
He hasn't read any. He just decides not to read it. But then, like, my mom will read it to him. And she's like, oh, my God, this is so funny about you. And you need to read it. And he's like, and then she called me one time, and she said, yeah, I read your comics to, I read your comics to your dad. And he said, she doesn't make me mean enough. I need to be meaner. And but yeah, every time somebody comes to me, they're like, I love your dad so much. I just wish he was my dad. And I'm like, this guy's crazy. Like, I've actually told him you're a crazy man, and he's like, I know I'm crazy. My name's Khan, Crazy Khan. That's me. And I'm like, and so like there are people who just want to be his kid, and I'm like, totally different, history. But so
He's
yeah,
fishing for a superhero spinoff.
yeah. So my family loves my comics, loves being in my comics, and just because it's nostalgic and it's stuff about our childhood, like the funny parts in our childhood. And I kind of don't spend too much on like the depressing times because I think we've experienced them enough to like not really want to go back into that world. So it's just kind of, and also I deal with my father better with the humor that we share together. He was just he's just a tough like hard guy, but he has crazy eccentric things that are funny, and like that I'm sure there are other eccentric, funny, crazy dads out there that that you guys have, and those stories connect with people with you guys, and so I just like to like focus on the funny, positive side of what happened. I think I have this story with my dad about when my mom left and I had to call him more, and we never really talked or called at all. It was sort of like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need money? Okay, bye. And so there was this time where we actually started to bond and like talk about like our interests and talk about like our actual lives, what we were doing. And so in a way, comics kind of was therapeutic, and was a way for me to deal with my relationship with my dad. So yeah, that's why I do it, so.
Leslie, you have a lot of fiction mixed in with your work. Has that made it any easier, like navigating some of these things? Are you able to turn someone into a character ever? No, they see right through it?
No. There's one character that's a bird, and it's my friend Steve.
I love him.
And yeah, me too. He's my favorite. And at first, like, I did it, and I was like, that's Steve, but it's a bird, so Steve. And then I put it up in a gallery, and one of Steve's best friends came, and he'd never seen it before, and he didn't even read it, and he looks at it, and he's like, that's Steve. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, it's totally Steve, but it's a bird. I was like, yeah. So, and then Steve hated it. And then Steve came around to it, and now he wants me to write a whole bird series, and he's like, and I'll write the introduction, the man behind the bird. And like, so I don't know, people will come around, but no, it doesn't really make it easier, because I'm like full of guilt like all the time about it. I just like, because I want to do it. It's like, for me, again, a hippie thing, like this is like my pure love aspect of my life. But I'm just like, I'm a very kind person as well. And so if I do something, I'm like, oh, I get really nervous, and I don't know. So yeah, no is the short answer. Do we have
Anyone else, or we need another question?
I should get my phone.
I'll ask one of the questions I had. So this is like a women's panel, and I think we can all kind of agree that we wish that
Forgot about that.
would not be a thing. Yeah, like it just would kind of die away. So my question was, so there's this whole thing going on in TV right now that I'm sure you guys all know, where they're like, oh my God, women can, not only can they be funny acting, but they can write funny. And my question is if like that whole, the attention to funny women is like advancing like women being equal with men, and I personally think it's not. I think it's taking us back to a time when we're separating them, and I think it's like pushing feminism. I'm not a feminist, but I think it's pushing it back by emphasizing it. So I was wondering if you guys, what your take on the whole women can do things thing.
Like by making a deal out of it, it's just pointing out how like it shouldn't be news that women are funny, right?
Yeah.
I actually felt this way. I had a baby almost 2 years ago, and just like in the first few months of motherhood, it's like a really stressful time. It was for me, and it was the first time in my life that I really was comparing myself and feeling like totally inadequate to other women. And that was actually part of it, because I feel like the standard, like ideal mother, wife, woman, lover, like all these things, like has to be funny and cool, like not flustered, you know, and able to like laugh things off. And that's like one of the most, you have to like be pulled together, but you also have to be super casual about it. And that's kind of part of it. Like it has to always be like light and funny, in addition to like getting everything done. And, you know, you can't just like it actually is fine to have a messy house and do like all those things in the 50s that were, you know, or the 60s, the standard of, you know, what women like strove for to compete with other women, you know, having nylons without a run in them or something. It's like, okay, it's okay to wear yoga pants for, you know, 3 months after you give birth, but you have to have a sense of humor about everything or you're really failing as a woman now. And it's not the easiest time to like have a sense of humor, you know?
Yeah.
But gets better.
I feel like with the whole thing, like when I read about the girls, women thing, I get really upset that it's like you said, it's news. It shouldn't be news that a gender can do something, but at the same time, it's such a double-edged sword because if they don't acknowledge that it was like an all-women's writing team or something, I'm like, I want them to, so I don't and I do. Like I feel like it is awesome when only women create like a successful TV show or something, but I also don't want that to be a thing. So
Yeah,
it's sort of, I can't come around to it really.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is that confinement issue, like to group the fact that it's an all-woman writing team in like a special category to try and sort of like set it apart from everything else. Whereas like it doesn't need to be separate, which is why women in comics panels are kind of annoying because you know, that sort of calls attention to the fact that like, we'll put all the girls over here in this little thing. And that's like, you know, pat ourselves on the back for like nodding to women in comics. Whereas just integrating women into the comics panel or having a panel like this, which is the focus of which is autobio, rather than the fact that we're all ladies, is something that's really helpful, I think, to sort of, you know, walk forward into the
like,
new
why
generation.
not like have it like if you're gonna, I don't know, this is getting extreme, but if you're gonna not like say, oh, it doesn't matter whether you're female doing this or male doing this, why not have it be an all-female panel? Like,
But
there's nothing wrong with
call
it.
like girls make comics.
Oh, we definitely don't mean to like be disparaging toward the people who've set this panel
No,
up
not at
because it's definitely a conversation that is still being had. So we were all happy to like
And
have
I
the
think
conversation.
It's like the panel was conceived like based off of Hillary Chute's book about women who do autobiography,
Yeah,
and so that
right.
was like the
Yeah.
premise for it. So like, yay, awesome. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's-
I actually don't really know about this phenomenon that you're talking about because I haven't watched TV in a few months other than RuPaul Drag Race and and Mad Men. So like,
Stay there.
but yeah, I mean, why? In the one hand, it's like if things, just do it and don't talk about it. Like let the viewers notice on their own that like every single name that's like running down the screen looks like they're probably like female born. You know, like why make a big deal about it? But at the same time, then I'd also be like, why aren't they talking about that it's
Yeah.
all? So I don't really
You can't
have
really
anything
win
to say,
with
I
it,
guess,
yeah.
about it. But yeah.
I don't know, like, I think, like, let's say you were putting together, like, a comedy night, and it was, like, female-only comedy night, which I don't know, do those happen?
Yeah,
They do?
yes, they do.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I would go. I'd be like, cool. Like, yeah.
Oh, I went to, this is interesting, I didn't know about myself. I went to an open mic comedy night because there's tons in New York and I like to go. And like I said, I'm not a feminist in any way. I enjoy everybody's work, but I noticed that when the guys were up there, they were also telling really awful jokes, but that's beside the point. But I sit with my arms crossed a lot, so I was sitting like this, and then when the women went up there, because there were only about maybe 4 or 5 women and a lot of guys, I would sit with my hands uncrossed and like my palms open, and I had no idea I was doing this until the end, and I realized like there is something that kicks in where you want to be like, I want to protect this woman and like show her that I'm open to like receiving her jokes, and then the guys get up there and something else happens where I'm just like, if this guy tells a tit joke, I'm going to be so mad. And I had no idea that I reacted to the sexes like that until someone pointed it out. So you can't help it. There's something intrinsic where you're like, I'm going to protect my ladies. But like, yeah, I don't even want to have that be a difference of something I do. Can't win.
next question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe I am, and I'm like not sure of the definition of feminism.
I mean, it's just about equal rights. It's just that men.
Sure, then I'm a feminist.
But I mean, it has gotten bastardized, it's too bad because a lot of people are like, I'm not a feminist, but I believe that equal rights should happen, which is too bad. And like, especially
I like when
in
people
comics.
say they're humanist.
Humanist, sure.
I'm like, dude, just be a feminist. It's cool.
But I mean, to be specifically upset about an issue where women are underrepresented or marginalized, which happens in comics, happens in all industries, happens to everyone, to then react with like, well, I feel that this is offensive to my feminist beliefs. That just makes you like, that's just specific to this particular issue. It doesn't mean that you have to like change your voting registration. Like,
Yeah. So when do you think? Thanks for pointing that out. I never really realized that I have this like idea of a feminist in my head that is probably very biased. Like I have a bra burning, like angry, man hating woman, and it's definitely not the definition of feminism. And we should not. But it just can't help it. That's like what I think, 'cause that's how they're portrayed when they're being very vocal about it. So that was a good one. Thank you.
So I sort of like related, but not really. I was going to ask you guys a question about style, like the drawing style and everything, because I've had my drawing style called, not like in a negative way, but like my drawing style is like, because I don't ink my comics, I like ink with dark pencil, and so it's been called like inviting and feminine, and I was just wondering if anyone else gets comments about their style like that, or if you want to talk about style at all, or I don't know. If it's not interesting, that's cool too.
No,
But I
it's
just thought of it.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. I just feel like I've been dominating the. I haven't socialized in a long time.
Well, I was thinking actually back to the woman's. Let's just get back to the question where you don't know if you're a feminist or not. But I was thinking about that question about women, being discriminated in certain areas or careers, and I just think comics. I never really saw it in comics that much because it just is a really inclusive community. And when I started doing comics, it wasn't really about who are the other females doing comics right now. Well, there weren't too many. I mean, not too many that I knew, and I think it's cool that we have panels like this that showcase that there are women in comics. But I guess maybe I think back when I started, which isn't like the 70s or anything. It's like a couple of years ago. It just seemed like there weren't as many women cartoonists, and I guess maybe that's why do we need these panels? Because there's so many women doing them, which is awesome. And I think because when I started doing them, there were guys who were inspiring, and they didn't have to be guys, but they just happened to be guys that were inspiring to me. And so I never really saw myself as a woman cartoonist. I just saw myself as a cartoonist. And I think, what you were saying is that, why can't people just, see us as cartoonists? And I think I agree with that, but also it's a double-edged thing, you want to empower and, so it's, I don't know, it's you just want to be a cartoonist, but at the same time you want to be inspiring to other women, especially younger women.
When I was starting out, I actually did look for female role models in comics and found some amazing ones, but fewer than I would want.
Right.
I would say the majority of the comics that I really love are women.
Right. I mean, there's so
accident,
many amazing, creators that are women that you can look to, but at the same time, when I was a really little kid, before I thought about making comics, all of my favorite comics and all of the comic characters that I read and identified with were male.
Yeah.
And now I think there are people making comics that have little girls that I would have read and identified with, that I'm so glad that exists now. But that's why it is important to sort of be like, yes, I am a woman in comics. I'm not just a cartoonist. I also am a girl. But not to marginalize it. But in order to be a role model and to let little girls know that they can do this. I taught in Chicago schools for 2 years, and I taught from ages 8 to 12. And like from 8 to 10, it was really gender, like everybody like lots of girls, lots of boys. And then from 10 to 12, it was like all boys. So there's like some point in development where girls are like, that's a boy thing, and stop doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was really horrified, because the girls would like stop taking my class and I'd be like, what's up? And they'd be like, oh, I'm taking cheerleading now, or, it's not, there's too much video game talk in your classes. And I'd be like, I can't control that, I'm really sorry. And all the little boys would start making like Mario comics.
But at least the ones who want to come back.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there would be these really awesome girls who would come back and be like, no, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is why it's really important to have women in comics panels, and to have women who represent sort of like, yeah, I'm a girl, like whatever. And also because, especially on the internet, I feel like there are a lot of comics that still sort of utilize anti-women sentiment for humor.
Oh, yeah.
That it's just like, a lot of kids see that and they're like, that's what comics are, ha ha ha, boob joke, dick joke. And it's like,
yeah, there's more to it.
and then they become adults that have panels and they're like, boob joke, dick joke. And it's like,
The style question you asked is really interesting, though. I think that, because I drove up here, actually, Leslie, we dragged her from New York in a car. And there's 4 of us women, and we were talking about how often women are, people have this idea that women can't draw, and because women are more Lisa was saying women are story driven, we're very verbal, so we tend to focus on the story. But I feel like it's like an archaic belief that women can't draw, and like a lot of people are proving them wrong. And as people look at women's art, which does tend to be, more flowery, like the pencil, I don't think is a woman's thing, but I think that people will see it as soft. I can understand it. But it's interesting to have that kind of fall away and have a lot of art-driven women's comics. So do you guys ever get that response?
Well, I just early on when I was sort of determining what my style would be, or whatever. I mean, you don't like decide, but you have to kind of make certain decisions. I did decide I'm going to draw like a woman. I'm just going to let it happen and stop trying. I mean, I realized I was trying to draw like a guy, which to me is like drawing professionally. Like you look at a drawing, and within one panel you could say that person knows how to draw. Yeah. And I think a lot of women don't draw that way. You might have to read a book before you realize that they're really great at drawing. But I like 80% of the comics that I really love are probably done by women, and it's not just for the writing. Like I really love the, sometimes it's even called like naive or awkward or whatever drawing, but it's not as like slick. A lot of times.
I wonder if we're just like smarter at like figuring out how to invite readers in and like. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like using style in a certain way.
We don't, I think a lot of us aren't, we haven't read a lot of superhero comics.
We're not copying.
Right.
And we
Sorry.
haven't, we're not trying to draw like Jack Kirby or whatever. I mean, I love Jack Kirby. But I think we also have like other influences besides traditional like superhero comics that we grew up with, and art and like
Like kids' books.
Illustration,
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of people are like, well, why don't you draw like like a superhero man, like how the men in superhero golden age comics drew, and like talking about panels and tangents. And I think we are more into like not having to have so many rules when we are telling our stories, and being freer with how we tell them. And I don't know if that just comes from like a painting background or what backgrounds we come from, but
Well, that makes sense. A lot of men who even have deviated from superhero comics, I think almost every guy in comics has owned How to Draw the Marvel Way. And no matter, even if you develop your own, there's still there's a style there. And like, as women, I mean, I don't like superhero comics. I never read that book. So it came from like a cartoony, like a Sunday funnies thing, which is very, much more loose. So I think that that's why we draw differently.
Yeah, I think I started with like Calvin and Hobbes or something. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
which is
really
like a
loose,
different,
yeah.
looser. Yeah.
I kind of disagree with everything everyone's saying right now. I just want to say because I think about comics. I think about the tradition of like how a page is set up, the format. That's what I fell in love with. Most of my favorite artists are men. And I think this is going to sound shitty, but like when people are looking at my artwork, most of the people that they'll compare it to are all men.
No, when I look at your artwork, I think of like, I don't know, like Ron Reger and like some like dudes mostly.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, it's just like.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
But like,
It makes sense if you're, yeah.
So for me, it's important to keep that going and to show that like you're a woman and you still care about the craft, and you can do it just as good as they can.
Yeah,
know?
you do have a very ambiguous style, which I think is great. But like, yeah, it could be either. So
Yeah,
it's a
that's good.
compliment.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Linda Berry,
Yeah,
Linda
Linda
Berry,
Berry. Phoebe Gleckner, Julie Doucet.
Alison Bechtel.
Yeah. Carol Tyler.
Renee French.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's a
find her till
feminist
recently,
movement.
though.
Yeah, she's
Actually,
amazing.
yeah.
Nicole Hollander. She's local.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's like a bunch of current cartoonists, you know, like, I'm just gonna, I don't want to
Right, that
list
are
all my
still-
friends,
right.
but yeah. There's a lot of people I know, but there's a lot of, like I said, I gravitate towards women's comics just because I
Yeah.
identify with them, I guess.
And there's a great community that you can look at your peers' artwork and be really
Yeah.
influenced by it.
Just go to any of our websites, and I'm sure we've
And there's
all
little
linked our
links, yeah.
friends. Yeah, there's good ones.
So that was perfect timing because it's audience question time. So yeah, what's your question?
Oh, I can answer this. I'm just talking so much. I think my style, like I never went to art school and I never took a writing class, so they're very much, I guess raw is the appropriate word. Like I don't draw very well, and I'm a better writer than I'm an artist, but they're both clearly not uneducated, but they're not technical. Like it's my style that doesn't follow the rules, and so I think it's reflected in both art and storytelling. But you guys?
I guess mine's more like sketchbook style, anything goes. I deal with like the overall, the entire page, and think about the layout of the entire page, not so much in panels. And it's just I have more confidence with my making comics that way. Like I've always tried to, like whenever I have like a deadline for like an anthology or something, and I feel like I got to do this professionally. I'm gonna get my Bristol board. I'm going to thumbnail. I got to write the script first. I'm gonna write the script. Thumbnail. I'm gonna pencil, and it totally like it totally like stresses me out. So like I end up just going back to my sketchbooky. And I have more confidence that way because I think, well, I could just throw this away, and it's not precious, and like and I don't really pencil first. I always just like to just draw with a felt tip, and just because like I guess because like I've always been like I love like just painting where you just have this blank canvas and you just go for it, and that's how I kind of deal with my comics, is that I just want to go for it, and just like I feel like there's like a lot more of a connection between me and the page than like having this assembly line feeling to it. It's just something that I'm not used to, and and I guess a big influence in my style is I guess the French cartoonists, the guys who do all the cartoony stuff, like sketchbook stuff, like Joan Safar's sketchbook stuff. Aude Picot is a really great female cartoonist in France. She did this great book called Translat that I love a lot. And so it's all cartoony. It's panelists and panels and just like line art and really simple and cartoony. So
I'd say my style is like a simplified realism, somewhat awkward, just like the writing. I try not to think about it and just get it down and be as like frank as possible. And I try to make it like the same tone that I would talk to my friends in, and I think about that in terms of drawing too. Like I don't ever want to draw something that looks like kind of like impressive, like it's got to be.
Do you think that you know how like humans look like their pets? Like, do you think that our artwork is like an extension of ourselves, I guess, in that way?
Yeah, I just like to draw people with black hair. That's all.
Yeah. Anyone else? I've drawn a comic where I real life argue with, not even shown it. I'm like, you should know that, Justin. Where I like had a realistic drawing of me argue with my cartoon character. Because when you use yourself as fodder, I think that you tend to put your worst qualities into, or the best if you don't want people to know. Yeah, but I'll emphasize my worst qualities, and then I keep going with that. Like I can't help it, and then it becomes a caricature of myself, and I am a little bit disconnected from it, and that kind of ties into the not liking yourself thing. But yeah, there's definitely you separate yourself too much sometimes. You have to be very aware not to do that, otherwise you become a cartoon character and not yourself.
You go crazy.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, when people review work and they, critique the story that you've written about your life, they can be like, oh, she's selfish and shallow and gross and terrible, and you have to separate yourself from the character that you've written that's, representing you in order to not be, like, incredibly damaged by reviews that are reviewing your work and this character and what they think about their behavior. But this is like a curated set of instances and thoughts and behaviors. So it's a character, it's not you. So something that I struggled with when I first started sort of making Autobio full time was that separation between myself and my character, where I had to sort of understand that was a character and separate from me, and that I couldn't feel bad about things that happened to that character, and like there has to be some distance there, I think, in order to not go totally nuts. Yeah.
I know I was at a convention once and someone came up to me and I was putting chapstick on, and he was like, oh, I didn't think you were kind of person that would wear makeup. And I was like, excuse me, I'm a lady. Of course I wear makeup. But at the same time, I realized he was talking about my character. Like, he didn't think my character would wear makeup. And I think he was like surprised that I was like a real live woman. So yeah, there's definitely a disconnect there.
Yeah, I get people at conventions who are like, it's so weird that I know these things about your life. And I'm like, it's not weird. I wrote them and shared them publicly. It's flattering that you know these things about my life. And also, that's not me, that's my character. Like, yes, this thing happened to me, but, you don't know me. You've never met me before.
You know the version I've presented to you. You don't know me as a human.
Yeah.
Question about fiction. Like, if you've done fiction and what your reaction to writing, like, if you felt it wasn't as rewarding writing fiction versus autobiography.
I'm trying to remember, but like the first couple comics I did was fiction, but they were very based on like my life. They were inspired by certain scenes in my life, but I had fictional characters, but I myself think fiction for me is hard because I'm always, when I think of fiction, I'm struggling. Like, I always feel like it's a struggle with writing fiction for me, and I feel like there are a lot more. This is just me, but I feel like there's a lot more rules I need to follow with fiction. Like, there needs to be a conflict and then with autobio you just don't even think about that. You're just thinking of, oh yeah, this is a great story that like, you know, this is gonna be awesome to share with people. But like I feel like, because I'm trying to do a detective comic that I've been struggling with. I'm trying to take like a break from autobio stuff, and I'm really struggling with, basically it's more the writing that has always been hard for me. So that, I mean, that's my thing with fiction.
Is it
But,
like a detective story?
It's gonna be a detective story
Oh, that
based
sounds
in
great.
San Francisco.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like it.
with Filipino dudes.
Of course.
Dudes. Some ladies.
What about you guys?
My only concern when I'm trying to write fiction is that it might seem contrived compared to like what I do with my autobiographical stuff, because I know that's real, so I can put it out there and not feel like, oh shit, did I get that right? You know what I mean? Does that feel honest? Does that feel real? But that, I'm excited because I want to do more fiction stuff, and that's going to be an exciting hurdle. And I think you have to, obviously with anything in life, you try and you fail. And like, so I'm excited to have less, in a way, have less boundaries and more characters. But yeah, it's kind of scary, I think, more scary.
I think there's like this, I don't know, this statement that, or this thought that like fiction is harder to do and like autobio is this stepping stone and that kind of thing. But when I read a novel and find out that it's like really based on someone's life, I'm more excited. You know, I was like, oh, at least most of this is true. That makes me feel better. I don't know. I mean, I feel I'm like still new at this, but I feel like so committed to autobio. Like I can't imagine switching to fiction at some point because I'm so interested in it, and like it seems endless. But it does seem. I mean, you're limited to what you know, your own experience and stuff like that, and so like that's kind of scary, you know. With fiction, you feel like, oh, they can always come up with something. But I mean, do you guys think like fiction is even like a possibility if you haven't done it yet? I mean, anyone else?
I'm working on a fiction story right now, but it's about a little kid and who's like a boy and has all these. It's got like a lot of flights of fancy. But I would definitely agree. Like I really like knowing something is rooted in reality, and I think the older I get, the more I want that. I want to know like someone has gone through this experience. So I would definitely agree that it's more interesting almost, but not, you know, not more interesting. Just to me, it's
Right.
intriguing.
Well, and I think that there's like fun things you can do with an autobiography, like with Leslie's work, where she has like mixed in like fantasy or fiction things, or even using like that's why comics is so awesome, because you can do crazy non-reality based things. Like if you turn your character into like a bear, all of a sudden it's like a little bit fiction, you know, and so there's a lot of room for experimentation within that like real life based stuff, which is why I really love it.
Yeah.
Also, but I haven't done any fiction since I was 12, so.
Like I guess I do fiction in a sense, because yeah, like half of the stories are kind of made up because the character is like fantasy characters, like a guitar that walks and talks. But all the stuff he says is based on stuff that I've kind of heard and thought, and like another parts of me, and I think that's what all writers do with fiction anyways. But I have to say I have the most fun writing for that character, because I can make him do whatever. Like he's gonna start his own like pie factory, and like I don't know, she's like, yeah, cool, but like I can't start my own pie factory because I don't know how to bake. So.
Yes, you can. You're a woman. You can do
I do
anything.
whatever, yeah.
So we have like 3 minutes left. Does anyone have any burning things that they want to say or ask each other or audience or? Okay.
You can ask it anyway. I can see you're like
Yeah.
afraid.
Some of you guys and other writers that I admire write about being in a community of other writers and other artists. And do you think it's kind of necessary to have that, or is there some benefit if you're the only person in your circle that does that, or should I put out flyers around friends and make comics together?
I think that I definitely hang out with almost exclusively cartoonists these days, but it's more, for me, it's a personal preference. I just like having people who know what I'm, going through and experiencing. Especially when you become a professional, you can't go to your normal friends and be like, my publisher is being such an asshole, because they're like, fuck you, I'm like working a 9 to 5. So for me, I just enjoy the community, but I know that a lot of people like get help and assistance from their friends. You guys?
I think it's good to at least have like one other person. Like again, it's a personal preference, but like especially you do work independently and you're always in your head and you're like always down on yourself, and it's always good to have some other person there. To say, you're a little bit crazy, you're going a little bit nuts, and this is great work, and this is not so good, But I've learned through time that because there are places or huge communities like let's do a comics jam, let's all get. I've learned through time that it's good to be selective with you. I mean, these people are your friends too. I mean, you don't want to be hanging around people who are like assholes to you all the time. Like I could do this comic better than like you want some. The community has to be nurturing in some way too, and I mean, you don't want to be I mean, that's what you want to get out of it, right? Is like a group is to like have some, feedback and some, yeah. So I think at least having one other person is great. I mean, if you have tons of people, that's awesome. But
Yeah, I think when you're making artwork or comics, it's really important to have people who inspire you, people who challenge you, and people who can edit you. Those are like the three most important things for me. And that's really hard to find, but it's not that hard to find. If you know, like if you like somebody's work, like, and they live near you, or like you start trading comics with them, or you just like ask them to hang out, but don't ask someone, if you don't like their work, don't be like, hey, let's make comics together, just like this, so.
There's a lot of hit and miss kind of things. Like you can go to a group hangout to make comics, and it can feel totally weird to you, and like just you don't fit in there. But that's not all of them.
Yeah, it could take a while.
Yeah, so you just have to like kind of keep trying. And like a lot of the people that I know in the comics community, I met on the internet first or at conventions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And comics is the community. I've dabbled in other like artist communities or writers communities, and I found that cartoonists, the height of fame that you can reach as a cartoonist is so low that no one's really that competitive. There are definitely people who are competitive, but everyone's very welcome. It's like one of the nicest creative communities I think you can be a part of. Yes.
You're like some people.
So we're kind of done.
Oh.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay.
I know probably all of you guys have stuff for sale upstairs, and some of you are like using a lot of books. What would you say would be like your one most representative or your favorite book that you've done?
Should we just go down the line?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my series is Powdered Milk, and there's one that's in color, and the rest are black and white, but I don't have a favorite. That's all.
Yeah, The Magic Hedge is my most recent stuff. I have a new one.
I just have one series called Eye of the Majestic Creature, so that's up there.
Well, you can get Whirlwind Wonderland, but my favorite is my latest is Out of This Comes the Crazy, which is just a bunch of sketchbook doodles about what's going on with my life in comics, and like crazy kid and being pregnant and having postpartum, being depressed.
That's such a good title, though. I only have like 5 copies of Drinking at the Movies. I just came here to hang out. So I don't know why
So
I'm
just
here.
hang out with Julia instead.
No.
I'm probably best known for French Milk, my book with Simon & Schuster, but I didn't bring any copies of it. And my most recent book is called Make Yourself Happy, and it's a collection book.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,